Hi, I'm Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative OBGYN. I get a lot of questions about a hormone, testosterone. Well, first of all, what family of hormones does testosterone belong to? It is a steroid hormone. That means it is derived, like all the steroid hormones, from cholesterol, which is one reason why cholesterol is made in the body. It's so that all the cholesterol produced steroids can be made. Without cholesterol, you cannot make any of them. Now, testosterone is a hormone in itself. It has its own set of receptors. So that's the mechanism by which hormones work predominantly, is by binding into a receptor, something like a key going into a lock, except the lock is mutable. It's not fixed the way the lock in a door would be. It can actually be more like a shapeshifter. It can be more open or more closed or more deformed. So it doesn't work as well, it works better. So we have the testosterone having its own set of reactions through its own set of receptors. But testosterone is also a precursor hormone. In fact, all estradiol, the estrogen that's made by the ovaries and also made elsewhere in the body, particularly for men because they don't have ovarian-produced estradiol, it is a precursor. Testosterone is a precursor of estradiol. All estradiol in the body comes from testosterone. Now, the ovary makes testosterone. That's how it gets changed into estradiol, through the action of an enzyme that's present in the ovary and elsewhere called aromatase. And aromatase converts androgens into estrogens. It converts the androgen testosterone into the estrogen estradiol. So I just put out a new word there, androgens. So testosterone is one of the group of hormones called androgens. Now, traditionally, androgens are thought of as male hormone, the whole family, because it does have male type effects among many others. For example, testosterone and other androgens, which can be converted into testosterone, can create facial hair or body hair, or that would be like pubic hair, or under the arm, axillary hair. That is all from androgens. And it also in excess can give acne and thinning of the hair, what we call androgenic alopecia, which in females would be the female type version of male pattern baldness. So we'll just pick the androgen that we're here to talk about, testosterone. Where does it come from? Well, a lot of people don't know. They have no idea. Doctors too, like, where does testosterone even come from? Well, it turns out that, as I mentioned, some of it comes from the ovary, and much of the testosterone made in the ovary is converted into estradiol, so it won't be circulating, but some of it does circulate. So it turns out that about 25% of all the testosterone in the female body during the reproductive years, 25% comes from the ovaries. Now, where does the rest of it come from? Well, another 25% comes directly from the adrenal gland. And where does the other 50% come from? Well, it comes from precursor androgens in that family of hormonal type called androgens, precursor androgens that can be converted into testosterone, predominantly in fat tissue, but elsewhere as well. And where do most of those precursor androgens come from? Most of it comes from the adrenal gland. So close to 75% of the circulating testosterone comes directly or indirectly through conversion of precursor androgens into testosterone. Now, what are some of the other precursor androgens, because these are important for you to know. One is called DHEAS, dihydroepiandrosterone sulfate. You don't have to know that. We're not giving you a test. But DHEAS is only made in the adrenal gland. So if a woman has symptoms of androgen excess, like she's suddenly growing a beard, something is really wrong. You need to always test your testosterone, but you also need to test your DHEAS. And if the testosterone is high, you don't know where it's coming from. That's really important to know. You don't know. So it could be coming from the adrenal through precursor conversions, or directly from the adrenal, or from the ovary. But DHEAS, that only comes from the adrenal gland. So 100%, not 90, not 80, 100% DHEAS is adrenal origin. Now, I'm going to talk perhaps in the future about other issues of androgen excess. In fact, I'm thinking of that because I'm going to be speaking on that in 2 days when I'm at a conference in Miami where I'm going to be talking about androgen excess syndromes. But today here, I want to touch on androgen deficiency. Really low testosterone is what we would be talking about. So one way that you can have lower testosterone is lesser production from the adrenal gland. And by the way, that will happen in every woman to some degree, but not always in a predictable manner for any one woman. The adrenal gland has a portion of it called the zona reticularis. That's where the androgens are produced. And they've shown this over time. If you do like CAT scans of the adrenal, what do you find about the zona reticularis? It shrinks. Kind of everything as you get older shrinks, shrivels up. So shrivels up kind of. That's what happens to the zona reticularis that makes androgens. So the testosterone from the adrenal will go down, and so will the DHEAS, and the conversion factor, a product that comes from DHEAS, and that's DHEA, which is a hormone that is often given as a supplement, as an anti-aging supplement. And that's important to know because it's going to come into what do these hormones even do in the body. So DHEA is very important, as all the androgens are, for growing bone and muscle and sex drive and energy and focus. So we're going to come back to that because not only does the adrenal tend to make less testosterone and other androgens as you age, the ovary, which by the way, every woman knows this, you go through menopause at some point, usually around age 50, that's average, age 50, 51, but the ability to make estrogen, to ovulate, and also to make progesterone, that goes away around that time. That's menopause. But the ability of the ovary to make testosterone, it never goes away. It's a different skill set. You don't need a single egg for the ovary to make testosterone, but you must have eggs in order to make estrogen in the form of estradiol and progesterone from the ovary. So we always make testosterone from the ovaries. We always will make testosterone from the adrenal. We will always make DHEAS from the adrenal, and we will make DHEA from both the adrenal and the ovary. But 80% of DHEA comes from the adrenal. So those other precursor circulating androgens, either 100% like DHEAS or 80% DHEA, come directly from the adrenal gland. That's why it's so upsetting to me when I think about what's going on in my medical world. So many women are told, well, you're going through menopause, now you need to go on testosterone. There is nothing about menopause that means you need testosterone. Now, you may benefit from it or you may not benefit from it because it is separate. I really want to make that clear. Declining testosterone levels is not related directly to menopause. It's not about having eggs. It's not about your estrogen. But here's something that is important to know, that some women actually have a relative excess of testosterone around menopause and the perimenopause. And why is that? Because when their estrogen levels decline, which is what's happening as you go through perimenopause, you have some ups and downs, but the general trend is down, then you make less of a binding protein called sex hormone binding protein from the liver, which is stimulated to be produced by the estrogen. And what that means as far as testosterone is that less testosterone will be bound up or held hostage by this binding hormone, and it will be free to act on the receptors, because in a healthy reproductive age woman, she makes a lot of sex hormone binding globulin, much more than men would have. And so it holds that testosterone bound, so it's unavailable to act on the receptors. If it can't act on the receptors, it might as well not even be there. And that is really important to know. As estrogen goes down, the free or unbound testosterone can go up. So even though the total amount may actually be reduced, the amount that is available to act on the tissues is actually more. And that is another really important point to keep in mind, is to look at sex hormone binding globulin and or free or bioavailable levels of testosterone. The only problem with measuring those is they're typically so small relative to, say, men, in women, that sometimes, depending on the lab, those results may not be as accurate as we'd like because the levels are so small. Now, I hear this come up a lot too. Well, women have more testosterone in their bodies than estrogen. Well, sometimes that is true, but here's the thing. It's kind of not really important in the sense of understanding what's going on, because you have what you have in order to do what the body needs to do. It's not like it's a competition between this or that. It's important how they relate to one another. And the amount of testosterone can vary depending on a normal menstrual cycle to some degree, and also how the receptors work. And that leads into something else I want to touch on, which is that when you do need testosterone, and as a general rule, many women, but not all, will benefit from having some additional testosterone as they age. Remember, this is separate from menopause. In fact, some women would really benefit from getting some extra testosterone or its precursor, DHEA, the other set of androgens that come mostly from the adrenal, a little from the ovary for DHEA. So what happens is that it is helpful to give some women, even at age 40, some extra androgens, because some women by age 40 will have a level produced of these hormones, particularly testosterone, that may be half of what she had when she was, say, age 20. Now, why would nature do that? Well, that gets into the sex drive part. So testosterone is related to sexuality and sex drive and sexual sensations. But it doesn't work properly in an absence of adequate estrogen. So that's really important. These hormones have tremendous complexities and interrelationships. So when you want to give hormone therapy, if a woman is not yet on testosterone, and at that point you just realize that she just needs it, not, like I said, not directly related to menopause, but she could benefit from it, you always want to start the estrogen first. Get the estrogen right, like you're layering, and then add the testosterone. And why is that? Because these hormone receptors have interconnectivity. And if you put too much testosterone in, it will down-regulate the estrogen receptors, and it will make it harder to get proper dosing and regulation of your supplementation with the estrogen. So there is a very interesting thing that happens during the menopause when you have the giant spike of estradiol that precedes ovulation, that actually upregulates or makes more effective testosterone receptors. And why would nature do that? Because a woman is about to ovulate, the testosterone goes up, increases her sex drive. Isn't that like totally normal for nature to want to, like, just imagine for reproduction, you want to have sex when you're ovulating. So nature puts in that little boost by upping the amount of testosterone and the receptor function of testosterone. So you have a little bump in testosterone production, and then you have a little bump in testosterone receptor functionality. But then when you have the bump of testosterone, it also downregulates then the estrogen receptors. It's all like perfect for what? For optimal reproduction. That's what it's all about. Remember, the prime directive of life, whether we want to have a baby or not, I'm totally for controlling fertility, but we need to know that that's how the body evolves. So it's fascinating that the receptors work up and down based on what reproduction would really require. Like you want to have sex when you're ovulating. So nature makes it that way. So testosterone, as I mentioned briefly, will go down naturally with aging, both because of the zona reticularis of the adrenal shriveling, unfortunately, and less production to some degree from the ovary, but more less from the adrenal. So we're going to get less of the benefit of testosterone. And testosterone, as I mentioned, helps to make bone and muscle, and it has cognitive effects. It has receptors all over the body. But just even if we talk about musculoskeletal and brain and sex drive, that's plenty for why you'd want to have enough testosterone. So if you do need testosterone, the only way to get it that makes any sense is through a compounding pharmacy. There is no commercial products for women for testosterone. Now, there are commercial products for men, like gels and such, but don't use those. They're dosed at such a high dose. Men have about 10 times the amount of testosterone as a woman. And if you try to take just a tiny bit, I can guarantee you, you're always going to overdose, and that is not good for you. So you have to have it compounded and only prescribed by someone who is really familiar with this. Now, I speak all the time against pellets. Oh my goodness, the levels I see of testosterone in women who are given pellets is ridiculous. They're way high into the male arena. You cannot control dosing with pellets. You get ridiculously super physiologic, super high levels, and then it comes down, and it's almost always too much. So use a cream that you put on once or twice a day, and then you can modify the dose as you need to. It gives you more fluidity in what you can give, and it will be absorbed. I can guarantee you that. And you want to monitor it so that you get a level that's in sort of the mid-range of what would be a reference range. So when I look at a testosterone level in blood, the ideal would be not a single digit. It should be preferably in the teens or 20s. And it can be higher. Some women feel better if it's in the upper half, but you definitely don't want to go too much, maybe the littlest bit if they feel good on it, but you don't want to go too much above the top of the reference range. So remember, a reference range is 95% of random people who say they're normal. You don't want to be in the top 1% of all women for testosterone. You don't mind being maybe in the upper, but we're not trying to give you super physiologic doses. We're trying to mimic nature, not outdo nature, okay? Men have gotten into lots of trouble by trying to outdo nature with their androgenic steroids, so don't follow in that bad pathway. So testosterone is more complex in many ways than estrogen because it has so many different sources in terms of its conversion, its precursors from the adrenal gland, and it's not as easy to know when exactly is the right time and the right dose to give. So there's a little bit of finessing, sort of biohacking to really know. And as little research as there is on how to optimize everything with estrogen, there's even less for testosterone in women. But it is a definitely vital hormone for women. Many women should be on it who aren't, and it's important to get on the ball and look at the levels, look at your symptoms, try to see how you've changed over time. And when you start low. You can always raise it. The worst thing is to start too high and you get acne breakouts and you have to start shaving your face. Nobody wants that. So don't try to overdo testosterone. We're learning more about it. The only thing testosterone in the U.S. is approved for is what is called hypoactive sexual desire disorder. And that condition is one that is self-diagnosed. It's like the woman says she does or she doesn't have hypoactive sexual desire disorder. It's not like there's a test and a woman can have a low sex drive and say, I don't care, I feel fine, or I don't have a partner, it's like I'm not like struggling, and then it would be, okay, you don't need testosterone. Or if she says, I do have that problem, then it's, okay, you do need testosterone. It's not based on any other thing like looking at muscle or other brain function or bone or anything. It's kind of primitive. We have a long ways to go with our medical system in understanding and properly using and dosing testosterone. But it's important to know where it comes from, that we do have reduced production as we are aging. It's not directly related at all to the menopause. And in fact, around menopause, many women will actually have androgen excess relatively because of the estrogen going down. And they'll have more problems with androgen excess if you add more testosterone and it's not properly balanced with the estrogen. So it's complex, but it is important. And I hope that this introduction helps you to have a better understanding of the androgens and particularly testosterone, which is a female hormone, not just for guys. Thank you. See you soon.